Hey everyone, my name is Ben Poyant. I am a 2022 LLS Man and Woman of the Year candidate, and I'm here at studios at Fisher with some of my colleagues. Within the last 8 weeks or so, we've had several opportunities to tell stories. Specifically, Michael Ramos and Tracy Drennan lost their fathers to lymphoma. And recently I told my own story about how I lost my brother to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma 20 years ago. It's a special day here because we've got additional guests who we would like to have a conversation with, including Kelly Flynn, Tracy's daughter, and my mother, Chris Streppa. So I wanted to just start things off with a conversation about how we've been impacted by blood cancer and maybe how LLS has helped us over the years. So if you don't mind, Mom, you could start us off.
First of all, nothing will stop you in your tracks faster than having one of your children receive a cancer diagnosis. The day is embedded in my memory forever. Fortunately, a good friend of mine said, "You can't go to this biopsy by yourself. I have to go with you." She insisted, I insisted I was fine. Boy, was I glad she was there with me when the doctor came out. And my son was within sight. And the doctor said to me, "It's definitely non-Hodgkin's lymphoma." And I wanted to crumble to the floor, but I knew I couldn't do that. And she went over to talk to him, and when she came back to me, she said that he said, "Mom's taking this really hard, isn't she?" What mom wouldn't?
But he was caring about you.
That was Josh. Josh cared about everybody, thought about everybody, helped everybody, made everybody laugh. So ours was a 5-year journey. And it was filled with laughter and lots of tears. During that time, Josh met the love of his life, one of his nurses, while he was at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and she is still a treasure in our family. The other thing that happened to us was being introduced to the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. They were just so generous and so kind and compassionate and helpful in so many different ways, from financial assistance to emotional assistance. Just them being there and us knowing we had them as a resource was a glimmer of light within our family.
Yeah, I remember at the time, I felt like we were lost. We got information from the people who had studied medicine their entire life, but it didn't always make sense to us.
When we found out that he had lymphoma, we were a close family anyway, but we became even closer through this horrible disease.
Initially, my brother had a bone marrow transplant, and they tested both our blood, and we were a perfect match for each other, which is something that's very rare. It was like a gift in a way.
It was a gift, but was it scary for you, knowing that Ben was going to be giving this bone marrow to?
No, that didn't scare me. Ben is a very kind and sensitive person,
Right.
and since Josh, since the bone marrow transplant didn't work, let's say, I was really worried that Ben would carry a burden somehow, that he might have failed, which was absolutely ridiculous of me to
Right.
feel that way, because I mean, it's going to work or it's not going to work. And you know, you hear 6 out of 6, well, that's the best you can get, and you just assume, okay, we're going to be fine now. And that was just one of the elements of Josh's treatment throughout the 5 years. He got graft versus host disease through a T-cell infusion, which also came from Ben, and that alone nearly killed him.
The bone marrow transplant was a way to rebuild his immune system.
Because they wanted to induce graft versus host.
Yes, but they didn't
And
know
they
how
wanted
serious
his
it would
immune
be.
system to fight the cancer, and they gave him a good dose, and it was really extreme.
What 2 great young men, though,
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
raised.
they sound like, well, I've always known Ben to be an extremely compassionate guy, and I'm sure your brother was just as compassionate, and now that I've gotten to meet you, I see where they get it from, and it sounds like your son was very loved, and especially whenever he, got the bad news, I'm sure he was grateful for having you there with him,
I appreciate that. And I learned quite a lot from my brother. He and I had already been close, but this obviously brought us closer. And to witness him go through what he did and come out still with a positive attitude and still be the person asking other people when they walked in the room, asking how they were doing before, that was the first thing out of his mouth.
Right.
So to see, witness him come through that with that kind of attitude, you learn from that, obviously.
Absolutely.
And what a blessing he had meeting the nurse, the love of his life, that he got to experience that kind of love. You said he had a really good sense of humor.
He did. He liked to play pranks.
Tell us a prank story. I want to hear one.
Oh, can I tell?
Yeah.
We lived across the street from this very nice young couple who were in their late 20s, maybe, Joe and Renee. And these guys figured out that they could go over to Joe and Renee's front window while Joe and Renee were watching television, and they could use our remote to change the channel or shut off Joe and Renee's.
That's a good one.
After a number of times, Joe would come out and look around, and I mean,
It wasn't just them, though. We walked around the whole neighborhood.
So this is where the IT started.
Yes, exactly. Josh initiated all of this. It wouldn't have been on my part, but I was always willing to follow.
yeah.
I want to share a fun story
Yes. go
about
for
my
it.
dad. The reason I want Kelly here is because I'm going to share a story about her. Kelly was five when my dad passed away, and the only granddaughter he had. He loved all his grandkids. They're 4, but they had this special little connection. You know how dads are with girls and granddads are with granddaughters. So he loved it when she came to visit, and he knew there were 2 things she loved when she visited. It was bread and butter and roly-polies. So when we would arrive,
together.
not together. Yeah, not together.
I'm not eating roly-polies on bread and butter.
Sounds
okay?
tasty.
We would
Just wanna
get
make that
there on a visit, and my dad would be at the front door with a solo cup for her to collect the roly-polies. He would go roll over a brick or a rock in his yard, and she collected them, built a little place for him with leaves and all that for the visit. And then go inside, and there was bread and butter at the table, and he would sit with her, and she'd have her bread and butter. But those roly-polies lived with her during the whole visit. They were named. She had names. But my dad went to the grocery store and took her with him. He took her everywhere. And a neighbor comes to our house, walked in laughing, saying, "Oh my gosh, I just saw Dave and your daughter at the grocery store, and she had dropped her roly-polies on the floor, and he was crawling on the ground, and she was crying because Charlie wasn't in there,
my gosh.
and he had to find Charlie. So he's crawling on the ground to come back with the groceries and all those roly-polies, but he would do anything for her. He was just that kind of guy, you know.
Springtime is always a very bittersweet moment for me because I love the spring. And my dad, he died in this spring, and his birthday and the day he died are the same day, June 3rd.
Wow.
So it's always a very moving time period for me, those couple of weeks in and around his birthday. But my dad, he was just such a loving guy, and he loved people. He's a simple guy, worked hard, put all his efforts towards my brother and sister and my mom, and I. I heard you say once before, Tracy, that you used to just go everywhere with your dad, and that's how I was. I would go to the bowling alley with him and watch him bowl, and we didn't really have a lot of money, but my parents both worked, and they both worked very hard to buy my brother and sister and I instruments, and somehow miraculously we always had music lessons, and there were always a couple of different stereos and record players and radios going on at any given time. Our house was just filled with music. And my dad had a great sense of humor, and I took him for his oncology visit at MD Anderson once. And we went in, and as he was in there having the procedure done, I was sitting out in the lobby, and there were probably 30 or 40 people waiting for their procedures and their families. And I looked around, and I would say it was probably 85% Latinos in there. Maybe it's a coincidence. And when my dad came out I said, Dad, check it out. Look at all these Latinos here. And he's like, that's it. It's got to be something in the tortillas. And I thought, here he is just coming out of what was probably not a very pleasant experience, and he could still make me laugh,
Yeah.
And that's just who he was.
When Josh was at Johns Hopkins, he had written a goodbye letter
Oh, really?
to everybody that was in the bottom of his Nike athletic bag that actually Laurie didn't find till a few months after he was gone. I'm sitting in my chair and I'm thinking about how fortunate I've been, and I don't regret anything in my life, and just trying to ease the way for everybody else.
He understood what was happening and fought it as long as he could. He did everything that he could to resist it. But, at one point you have to acknowledge the reality. And I think he got to that point and, understood that he had some things to say. So that was how he went about doing it.
The campaign has been an amazing experience. Would love nothing more than Ben being named Man of the Year. I think he deserves it tenfold. And, it's his goal to do this in honor of Josh. I'm just so pleased that people have reached into their pockets and supported this campaign. It's brought a lot of my friends together with me too, so.
No matter what happens, whether Ben gets, named the Man of the Year, I think he's always going to be the Man of the Year around here.
He's my Man of the Year.
Well, he is one of these guys I appreciate, but he's always working and doing something for us out here and for the company. And I'm sure he's even that way more so at home, with his family. He's a good guy, and I'm happy to be on his team.
And I appreciate what you guys are saying, but if I win this, it's not because I'm Man of the Year. My motivation has been to make Josh Man of the Year, because Josh to me was always that person. He was the person I looked up to. He deserves that title. And so my motivation really is to, if I can get it, that's what I want to do. I want to call my brother Man of the Year, and at the same time, obviously do a lot of good for an organization that helps so many people every single year. Thank you to everybody who's donated so far. Studios at Fisher has been a team member, and we've had a lot of people donate on their fundraiser page as well as my own. Please be on the lookout. The campaign ends on June 4th. You can go to goteamben.com, or you can go to sf.goteamben.com. You can donate at either website. All of it goes to the same total, and we will actually have an auction link coming soon where you will be able to bid on some of the auction items that we present, or auction items that other candidates present as well, but you're going to want to vote on ours. Michael, thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Kelly and Tracy, and thank you, Mom, for participating in a conversation that I know is difficult, but also I feel is necessary, especially when we're trying to raise awareness and offer up support to people going through the same thing. If you're unable to donate, that's completely understandable, but we would love it if you could share the videos, share the website, spread the word, spread the message, get as much out as you can before we end this on June 4th. Thank you very much for hanging with us, and thank you for listening to our stories.